All right. Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of Junior Resource Investing, the podcast dedicated to deepening your understanding of the junior resource sector and some important and exciting plays within it. As always, I'm your host, Matthew. Just a disclaimer here before we get going. As always, please remember that this is not financial advice. Neither myself nor my guests are financial advisors. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. For the full disclaimer, please check the YouTube notes below. With that out of the way, though, let's get going to our main event here. I'm very pleased to present our latest guest, Terry Lynch, who is the CEO of Power Nickel. Power Nickel is a nickel explorer developing primarily its NISK deposit in Quebec, which contains a very recent resource estimate of about 4 million tons of about 1.25% nickel equivalent, with lots of prospective land left. It trades on the TSXV in Canada under the ticker PNPN, on the OTC in the States under the ticker CMETF, and in Frankfurt under the ticker IVVI. Just as a note, there are other international listings as well. Terry, nice to talk to you again. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Matthew, thanks for having us on.
Perfect. Usually we start off with an elevator pitch, but actually because you are kind of the spearhead behind Save Canadian Mining, do you mind just kind of discussing that initiative that you started for us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, basically, we started Save Canadian Mining about almost 3 years ago now, and the basic objective was that we felt that the predatory short sellers were targeting mining companies in particular, and it was making it an unfair and very difficult for mining companies to finance properly, and it was making it very difficult for ordinary investors and even pension funds and mutual funds to make money in the mining sector. So we saw it as sort of a major threat to survivability for mining in Canada, and we thought we'd try and do something about it. So we started Save Canadian Mining to bring this issue to the public and to try to pressure government to make some changes to, make predatory short selling illegal, and to develop practices that would ensure that the investment banks sort of played ball and policed it, and IROC did its job. We're not against short selling. People say, "Oh, you're against short selling." I'm saying, no. If you want to take the other side of the bet on Power Nickel or any other deal, God bless. As long as you disclose to short, that's fine. That's fair ball. The problem with predatory short selling, the way we define it, is it's basically when people sell the stock that you don't own, and then they don't deliver it in a timely fashion. Basically you're supposed to deliver stock within 2 days after you trade it, and there's a failed trade thing that can go up to 10 days. But these guys keep on cycling it and never deliver it, and so what happens is, basically the stocks are going down on volume, and normal investors that bought the stock bought a story about, why they think they're going to find more nickel in James Bay or whatever. And then they see it going down and wonder, hey, what's happening? Maybe there's something I don't know. And then they, that old phrase, selling begets selling. So the purpose of the predatory short selling from the shorts that do this is they basically sell, at the top of the market, drive the stock down, and then look to cover at the bottom by either doing a financing with the company or buying it at the market. But, all that is done is we proved it statistically when we did a study that basically showed that the not just small cap stocks, but the overall TSX Metals and Mining Index is down to a third of its normal trading value. So historically, metals and mining stocks on the TSXV traded at or around commodity prices, which would make sense, right? It's a commodity business. Today, we're trading at 35%. So something's broken in the system. We need to fix it, and that's what the Canadian Save Canadian Mining Initiative is all about.
Perfect. So, in recent weeks, IROC did come out with a ban on naked shorting, correct? Have you had a chance to take a look at that? Is it effective?
We're actually going to be doing a Save Canadian podcast, shameless plug here, on September 19th on this very issue. So if people want to get more educated on that in depth, we'll have some guests as well. It's at noontime, September 19th, and you can check it out on SaveCanadianMining.com. Generally speaking, it's always been illegal to do predatory short selling. What IROC came out and did was they clarified it, and it was an important clarification because we had McMillan Bench, one of Canada's premier law firms, saying it was illegal, and then we had Scotiabank saying no, it wasn't. Obviously there was a gray area there, and I believe the investment banks have used that gray area to allow their offshore hedge fund clients to trade mercilessly in a predatory way, and to the great harm it's caused mining companies and mining investors. So this clarification was an important one because it clearly says, predatory short selling when you don't have the stock or have not, they call it a reasonable expectation of a borrow, but the reasonable is very tightly defined. I would say is clearly now illegal, and now they put the liability squarely on the investment bank's hands, and that's a first. Now companies will have to do something to bring this to the table. Now it's on, I think, the back of companies to show evidence of the illegal shorting, and thankfully there's some new tactics coming in that area that Power Nickel will be doing, and among others, and we hope to sort of create a bit of a flashpoint here and make some changes.
So not to steal your thunder for your September 19th there, which I'll have to tune into now, but you mentioned you're optimistic. Have you seen a difference in the market since that implementation, or is it maybe a little too early?
Yeah, it's too early. Listen, these guys, the predatory short guys, the one thing to remember is they're extremely well capitalized. They're generally the smartest guys in the room because they can pay the most. So these guys, they are bullies. And they this is this is just hot air at this point in time, and they're not scared from hot air. So there's going to take basically pain or government infractions to bring these guys to reality and to really impact the market. But I recognize that, and many of us in the space do. And our objective now is to now that IROC has said clearly this is illegal, investment banks, the onus is on you. Now it's upon the companies to sort of carry the ball to the banks and show them hard evidence of their malfeasance or not policing the rules, and to give them an opportunity to clean it up. We don't want to have, obviously investment banks are a supply of capital. We want them to be friendly to us. We want friends in the investment banks. Clearly, anybody that would tell you differently that's running a mining company is insane. So we don't want enemies there. We want friends. However, they've been allowing the short side of the game to dominate for many years, and that's got to come to stop. We need to get to allow long, players, to investors, true investors, the reasons why stock markets were invented, to actually get rewards that they deserve. And it couldn't be a better time because junior mining still, for the most part, is amazingly undervalued, and looking like we're coming into a great commodity cycle for us. And as long as investors are given a fair shake, they could make lifetime gains in this next cycle. So maybe now's our chance. So we intend to sort of push this initiative hard over the next few months, lobbying with the governments to make sure that they do what they promise to do, and make sure that IROC polices the investment banks and enforces the rules that are on the books.
Yeah, no, and I guess speaking as a private investor, I absolutely appreciate that you're carrying the banner here for this, right? So yeah, it's like, I guess, an expression of gratitude for doing that for us. Laws are great, clarification of laws are great, but what's even better is enforcement, right? So I guess we'll see what happens.
Yes.
Why don't we transition here now to why you're here, Power Nickel? So yeah, we'll kind of informally start the interview properly here now for you. 30-second elevator pitch on Power Nickel. What are you? Who are you? Why are you compelling? And why should investors care?
Sure. So Power Nickel is a junior explorer. We're developing the NISK project in James Bay, Quebec. We just announced recently our first inaugural 43101 compliant resource. About, generally speaking, 4 million tons of 1.25% nickel EQ, about 0.8% nickel or so. And it's got a lot of upside to it. If you look at the deposit, you can see infill drilling will probably add another couple million tons fairly quickly. And it's open at depth in both directions and extensions from that. So we're going to be starting a drill program next week that will hopefully, we think by the end of this one, we're optimistic we can probably get close to doubling that resource. And at that point, you're very close to being commercial. So commercial deposits start at about 8 million tons. Most are at 10 and up. generally speaking, this is a ultramafic deposit, sort of like Lynn Lake, which was 22 million tons, or Voisey's Bay, which is plus 50. We'd expect at the end of the day to be somewhere in between those two in terms of tonnage. So this will make it a very commercial deposit. And yet, if you look at it at a price per nickel pound in the ground, we are the cheapest nickel in the planet. So if you're looking to, if you like nickel as a commodity, and I love it. I think it's one of the best commodities you could possibly be in at this time of the game because of electrification and just urbanization. Then you'd have to say that can't be sustainable. So, and I don't think it will be sustainable. I think as people become aware of the NISK deposit and its great potential and what we've already done, there's going to be a manifest change in the stock price, and that's why it's one of the great place to look at, and obviously, within a portfolio approach, but obviously I'm long and recommend.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. Macro level view with battery metals, copper, nickel, all the rest base. I think that in the next 2, 5, 10 years, like you say, massive commodity cycle coming up. The greening of our electrical infrastructure and grid is going to require absolutely massive levels of development, right? So, no, I think this is, as you kind of mentioned at the get-go, a very opportune time for people to be discovering these kind of plays, right?
Tremendous.
Yeah. So history of power nickel. So it's actually not a spin out, but I mean you're transitioning from Chilean metals, and it was actually a purchase from Critical Elements, if I'm not mistaken. Do you mind just clarifying kind of the history of the company?
So it's actually one of the key questions I get when I'm out talking with investors, and I think it's a very pertinent backstory. So it's like we were called Chilean Metals, so we just changed the name to Power Nickel because we thought, hey, to be a nickel company and be called Chilean Metals is just non-congruent, right? So we love Chile, but we thought it would be more appropriate to change the name. So that's why we changed the name to Power Nickel, given the James Bay connotation. So that's the history of the name change. How we came across this is very instructive because one of the questions that I get most often is that this is a really great-looking deposit. How on earth did a small company like you get it? And it's like a fair question because usually if it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true. So we respect that because as investors, we're very, discerning that way. We know that there's many stories and few have substance. So when we looked at actually a shareholder of mine, who's one of the prominent investor relations people in the country, Jean-Francois Mueller from Paradox, brought it to me, and he said, Terry, do you know about NISK? And I said, JF, I have no idea. And he said, NISK is owned by Critical Elements, and he says, you should buy it from them. And because he knew that I had, helped Critical Elements, in their path and had been an investor and had a good relationship with management. And he says, you and JS have a good relationship. He loves the project. He wouldn't sell it to just anyone, but he said he might sell it to you. So, I said, okay. I said, well, let me have a look. I looked at the deposit, looked really good, but I thought, it looked too good, So I actually phoned Jean-Marc Lacoste from Monarch Resources, who actually had made or furthered the discovery, really. And he's a very successful, entrepreneur in the mining sector. He's had a couple of big wins. So again, obviously, even more dubious. It's like, here's a successful guy who's had a couple of wins, and he let this one go. Why? So I talked to Jean-Marc. I said, Jean-Marc, first, thanks for taking the call and talking to me. Can you tell me? I looked at NISK and it looks really good. How come you let it go? And he said, well, you know what? He said, we loved it too. We thought it was going to become a mine, but not to paraphrase him, but he said, but we just, at the time when we made the, sort of the big push was in 2006, markets were rocking, we could finance. And then all of a sudden 2008 came and, we had the gold project and we had the nickel project. Nickel had crapped out because the economy had crapped out. And he said, we just couldn't finance it. And he said, we had a chance to swap the nickel claims for gold claims surrounding our deposits that eventually became, the project they sold to Yamana. And, with Critical Elements, and it was a productive move for us. So we made the switch to gold and we made the trade. And, I thought the Critical would go ahead and run with it. But then then what happened was that Critical actually was drilling for gold and discovered the Rose lithium deposit, and obviously became the lithium play that it is right now. I think it's the best, most undervalued lithium play on the planet. So so when so with that backstory, it sort of said, okay, it looks like it's viable, and we did it further check. We sort of checked. One of the things we did is we looked at the Talon Metals deposit, and we looked at Palladium 1. their deposit as other nickel deposits that were sort of, like this NISK deposit, and said, okay, let's just sort of see, based on their 43-101s, how much drilling did people do and how much value in the ground using the PEA numbers of talent metals, just so we use all the same numbers, just to determine, hey, what value per meter drilled are they getting? And this is just I find for me when I'm looking at mining deals, it's not a bad rule of thumb to sort of say, hey, how prospective is the ground we're looking at? Mm-hmm. So I did that math, and talent metals, which is obviously, that's what every junior nickel company in this space would want to grow up to be, is basically about 41,000 or so per meter drilled value in the ground. So I looked at the palladium one, they were in sort of the 70,000 range, and we were at 90,000. So, basically, again, it's just a comparable number. It doesn't mean anything in and of itself, but it showed to us this is prospective ground. There's probably something more here. It just needs more drilling. So, based on all that and just feeling positive about the nickel market overall, we made the deal with Critical Elements. It made sense for them because they were getting no exposure for the market on it because it hidden in. I was the big investor in Critical. I had no idea. It was there on their site, but it was never anything I focused on. And so now it's out and it's growing, and to the extent that we create value here, we're obviously going to create value for Critical. So it was a good move for them, and it was a good move for both sides, which is what you like to see. So that's how we acquired it. That's the backstory of how we got the deposit.
Excellent. I was going to ask this question later on, but I feel like it dovetails nicely into the conversation here. I mean, and I guess preface here in full disclosure, I am a shareholder in Power Nickel. Thus far in my podcast, I am only interviewing companies that I have strong conviction in, and that's why I guess my question is why the heck are you so undervalued, right? What's is it just because you have yet to achieve critical mass where once you get to that 8 million ton mark, you'll see it kind of go off? Or
I think it's something a bit darker, unfortunately. I mean, basically, the stock started to run with the announcements of the press releases of the drilling, which were excellent, right? We had great drill results. Mm-hmm. We achieved all of our objectives. We hit on 7 of 8 holes. I mean, I don't know of another drill program that's done that in recent memory. The 8th was a fault line, even that was educational. Stock ran to 30 cents, and then it started to get pounded back by huge volume. Like, who is selling this stock at 30 cents? It's had the best results ever. When nickel is rocking, it looks like it's certainly with lithium and cobalt, the metals to be in for the next generation. And it's like, and somebody's selling large volumes of stocks? Who the hell is doing that? Well, it's not any of our ordinary shareholders. This is the shorts, okay? So they're just basically looking at my balance sheet and saying, you know what? And, they don't even know that's Terry Lynch of Save Canadian Mine. They just look at the balance sheet. This is all the outgoes do. And they just say, hey, these guys are going to need money, so we're going to short them. And then we're going to cover it down below, and we're going to make this obscene amount of money with no risk, generally. So they pound it back. So they kept on pounding it back. Then they sent in the investment bank and said, hey, we've got some money for you. We'll give you some money at 20 cents with a full warrant. And I'm like, guys, I raised money at 25 cents with no warrant, with flow through at 40, when nickel was under $5 a pound, and we hadn't verified the resource. Why on earth would I take your money now? Okay, makes no sense to me. I called my warrants in at 15 cents. We all wrote checks, including myself. My family's put another $500,000 in the till here in the last 90 days. So at 21 cents average. So clearly we believe. And and then of course on top of their selling pressure, then we have the general market fall off where people are worried about, hey, Russia, it's the end of the world, and everyone just went to cash or just get out of markets. So obviously that markets are basically driven by the last buy and sell order. So it's like you got more selling pressure happening, and then drove the stock all the way down. So I basically been pretty clear. What I've said when people ask us, well, what are you going to do in the financing front? I said, okay, we're going to get, drilling. And then after drilling, if the market doesn't react, if it still thinks that we're only worth 10 cents or 12 cents or whatever the hell we're worth today, then, okay, then we obviously need more capital. That's a truism. I can't deny that, because we need to push this thing forward one more step, or two. And so what we'll do is we'll do a rights offering, a backstop rights offering, and we'll also do a charitable donation around that, so that the core shareholders of the company, there's three groups that own almost 50% of this company, and myself, the Stern family, and Critical Elements, and we'll basically, a group that I put together will do the charitable side of things, so that we basically get the rights offering price, but we do it so that the company gets double the cash. We'll have whole stock. We don't care. And the company will get cashed up that way. Because my basic message is, if I got to give this thing away, which is what I'm doing right now, I'm going to give it to my guys, the guys that brought me here, not some shorts that are just raping and pillaging. That's just not happening. Not on my watch. So that's just my, that's my view on how things should be run. And I'm hoping the market wakes up. But if it does, it may. At this point, I'm sort of resigned to the fact that I won't really wake up until I do this. But when I do this, the market's going to wake up in a ripper, because what's going to happen post deal is all of a sudden we're going to have $4 million or so in cash. We're going to, we're financed through this round of drilling, but it would be at zero. So you can't ever get to zero. So we'll actually be financed, and we'll be able to actually extend this round maybe up to 7,000 meters. And then we'll be able to do another 10,000 plus meter program in January, February, March, April of next year. And where's that going to get us? Well, that's going to get us, in my view, and again, I'm not Nostradamus here. I'm a man who believes, and I believe that will put us over 10 million tons and make us commercial from a market standard. And undeniably commercial. And what do commercial units trade for? Well, they trade, Talon Metals is $1.20 per pound of metal in the ground. Why would we trade for less? I can't imagine why. We're actually in an easier developable area, a shallower pit, much more economic to develop. It's got better grade, but when you break things down in NiEq per pound, all the grade stuff is averaged out. So it's like, anyway, we should certainly be towards $1 a pound, which would be 10 times more than we're at now. Plus, we're going to find maybe 2 or 3 times things. So you start to put these numbers together and say, wow, this is a crazy deal. And like your question, how could you be so cheap? Well, I don't know, man. I'm pulling my hair out. But I generally think it's just in the selling pressure, and because the market knows we're going to finance. So that they just don't know how we're going to finance, even though I've told them they're never going to get any. It's going to be my guys. But they won't believe you until you do it. So we're going to have to do it here real soon. And then I think the thing will move.
Yeah, excellent. No, thank you. I guess just for the listeners out there, when Terry talks about 12 cents a share, 30 cents a share, the current market cap, if I'm not mistaken, of Power Nickel, it's not like you guys ran up super hot to $500 million and now you're adjusting back down. You're at $11 million market cap right now with, this is total napkin math, but 49,000 tons of nickel equivalent in the ground. That's almost $1.5 billion Canadian of nickel, right? So, I don't know. There seems to be a discrepancy here between share price and reality, right? So
yeah.
So why don't we run us through your team? Why are you the right man for your job, and why don't you just brag about the team that you've developed around you a bit?
Yeah, you know what? Fronting a mining organization, there's really 2 key roles in mining: raising money and telling the story. And that only works if there's actually a story. In order to have a story, you have to have an excellent team of geoscientists that understand what their business is, and it's the hardest business in the world to find a resource and develop a resource. In my view, I've been investing in a lot of different businesses. Mining's not my first, and I would say I've been in it for 10 years, and it's by far the toughest business I've ever invested in. That being said, I think now we're at a time in history where mining and commodities, in particular specific commodities, especially the battery metals complex, is going to provide, unbelievable returns. Like, people will wake up 5 years from now and saying, damn, I wished I'd listened to that podcast, because this thing is I think it's going to be crazy. So for us at Power Nickel, basically, I'm the storyteller and the money guy. Okay. I put my own dough in. I've got a group of high net worth friends and associates that people have trusted me over the years. And then we go out as normal commercial mining companies do, and we go to conferences and we, network with investment bankers and pension funds and mutual funds and try and, get them to buy into a story and go. So that's the money side of the game. So I think, we're well equipped to raise the money that we need. We will not make it because of lack of money. Okay. I'm convinced of that. So second part of the equation is, okay, what about on the science side? So on the science side, when you're a very small microcap miner like Power Nickel, you can't have the top tier talent working with you. You just can't afford them. So you got to rent them. You got to partner with them. Okay, that's just being honest, because you just don't have enough money, because the dilution would be so ridiculous, nobody would invest in you. So what we did, and this is why this resource was so fantastic, is by buying it from Critical Elements, we inherited a great partnership with Critical Elements, which is clearly an excellent geoscientific team. They've found Rose Lithium, and that's go check that out. It's like I think it's 1.8 billion, like an 81% IRR, and they're trading at around 300 million. It's a phenomenal project, and it's going to be one of Canada's great mining stories. Well, the team that put that together, these guys are bright guys. They know what they're doing, and so when we ended up making the deal with them, and I said, well, guys, how will we advance it? And they said, look, we've got just the guy. We got this company called 3DGO, Ken Williamson and Matthew Gaspares. Are really great. They helped us at Critical. They know this area really well, and he said, I'm convinced they'll do a great job for us, and we can execute. He said, we'll get the drillers and organize all that stuff. Let's hire these guys. So we met with them and talked to them, and sure enough, we said, okay, great, and they did an amazing job. These guys are the one thing I found in mining is that the great geological minds are scientific, but they're also artists. They have a feel for the earth some way, somehow, that other guys don't. I've met many PhD geos, and they could talk all the jargon that would just make my head spin. But then I've met guys that were equally, as letters behind their names, but that go out in the field and talk Spanish to the picaneros and learn from them. The guys are actually out there breaking the rock, and they would learn. Oh, there's a lead up there, and go check this. And that's how it's done, So you got to be you got to have some Spanglish, and these guys had Spanglish. So they had science, but they had intuition as well. And so they, we were blessed to get them, and they did an amazing job for us. And we've done, some good interviews with them, that are out there in the metaverse, on the technical approach that we're applying. And, we feel blessed. And again, our job is pretty simple. Our job is to find the resource, and then once we find it, we'll, at a sufficient scale, we'll start to de-risk it. But we've already done metallurgy and historically, and it was fine. But we'll do more advanced metallurgy to prove that even further, to de-risk it. And those are the key things. So you don't need to be staffed up internally and until you're ready. Now, as we move forward here, probably this next step, we'll start to add some team members that can, be more hands-on. And right now, I'm probably doing, too much overview of the science side when, really that's not my expertise. I should really have somebody internally that's my guy on that side of things. But for now, because of the relationship with Critical Elements, I feel we're okay. JS is a very competent, sharp, great geologist, and he sort of overviews the technical program for us. So I feel like we've gotten tremendous leverage for our team, and so that's what we did at Power Nickel.
Perfect. Switching gears here, just trying to cover the basis here, all the different things that maybe people want to know about. Just so share structure, right? There are good companies that just have lead weights strapped to their ankles because of the overhang, right? Dozens of millions of warrants and options that just destroy any sort of upward momentum. This is something that, again, I think speaks in Power Nickel's favor. Can you just run through share structure for us, right? I mean, just kind of give us what you...
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I think it's 91, almost 92 million shares outstanding. I think there's about something in the neighborhood of 8 million warrants or so, something like that. And generally speaking, we had called our warrants in, so the maybe it's even less, maybe it's like 4 million, and it's at 40 cents. So so that'll probably come into play this fall, and that's about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice tight, right? Yeah, not a lot of overhang. When do those warrants expire? Sorry.
2023.
Okay. Oh yeah, so near-term expiry as well.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So Now, again, just switching gears here, this is maybe a bit of a more lengthy conversation. I mean, jurisdiction, right? I mean, Quebec is such an obviously pro-mining jurisdiction, and I think, again, this is a feather in the cap of Power Nickel. Can you just run through who are your neighbors, infrastructure advantages you have, and just kind of tell us about why where you are is so advantageous?
Yeah. I mean, I think, when you're ticking boxes on mining, I mean, obviously first is resource, and you need both grade and size. We talked about that. And then the next things you need to check on is, hey, what's the community response like? Do we have community support? In this case, the Cree Nation is our Indigenous partner. Cree Critical Elements is, who we farmed in on this project, has signed a full deal with the Cree, and they have a great relationship with them, and we're looking forward to extending that at Power Nickel. So we have great support. They're supporting. There's another 3 mines being developed in the area. So it's not just notional support. It's actually demonstratable support. And then to the Quebec government's enormous credit, they have made a fairly progressive decision some time ago to be very proactive in the north with inspiring both mineral development up there, and by working with the Indigenous communities to educate them as to the benefits of mining development for them and for their people. And so as a result, we've got a very good broad community support plus great governmental support. To give you a perspective, the last time we raised money at 25 cents with a flow through at 40, so a 60% premium, which is attractive, right? As a shareholder, that's good because that means less dilution for you as you go forward in financing. Now, I'm looking at deals where I can get, if the hard money was at X, I can get 2.05X in flow through, or in charitable donations. So that's amazing, because that means there'll be less dilution, generally speaking, in Quebec because of its structure versus if you were drilling for the same thing in Chile or in the United States or Mexico, where they don't have these vintages. So awesome. So I really can't say enough about Quebec as a jurisdiction. I've never worked there before. Obviously we have local geos and local people that are very fluent in French. My French is reasonable but not fantastic, but we don't find the language as a problem. It's no different than working in Spanish in Chile. So I got nothing but good things to say about working in Quebec.
I mean, you are up near James Bay. That is a remote part of Canada, but you are not isolated, right? This is not the middle of nowhere or something.
Yeah. The second part of your question, I didn't touch on that, so let's go back. So right across the highway from us, we're off the highway, which is phenomenal. And where's this highway going? Well, the highway is going to a major Hydro-Quebec substation, which is our immediate neighbor. So it's like, wow, that's great, because they're keeping those roads open. So and the neat thing is, obviously, hydropower is the best power for mining because it's green and it's cost controlled, and most economic. Quebec's hydropower is legendary the world over for being efficient and cost effective. So in terms of the ESG side of things, of when we build this mine, and we won't build it, but whoever buys it from us will build. They'll be building probably the greenest carbon nickel mine in the planet, because they'll be able to tap into the Hydro-Quebec, and it'll just all be hydropowered, which would be awesome. And then we're just a few miles away from an airport. There's towns nearby to supply labor. The railway's not that far away. The port in Montreal is so infrastructure wise. Again, you tick the box and say, wow. I mean, I'm used to we had a project up in the high Andes and that we sold to Tech some years back, and getting there was like took you 2 days to get there. And then you had to stay at 4,000 meters. It was costing $400 a meter to drill there. I mean, it was insane. And development, wow, forget it. So this is, the neat part about this project is that this will probably cost $200 to $250 million to develop. Okay. And you'd say, hey, Terry, did you just pull that out of your butt, or where'd you get that? Well, I basically looked at Talametal's PEA, and that's a number they got. Okay. I believe would be very similar and possibly less because it's a shallower deposit, closer to roads and hydro, et cetera, that it may be less, but let's just call it somewhere in that range. Well, that's very economic because you'll end up, from a financing perspective, probably putting 25% of that up in equity, so call it 60 million. 60 million, when you're at 300 or 400 or $1 billion, which is what you should be at some point soon, not a big number relative to things. So those projects will return a tremendous IRR. So this thing is going to get built. And the one thing we haven't talked about, I'm sure we will, is North American nickel and why that's important now. But
so there's a couple of trains here that are leaving the station in terms of where I want to go with questions, but maybe I will start with. You mentioned there, right? So, the path to shareholder value, right? So you can develop it yourself, you can sell it, or even toll milling, right? You just stated fairly unequivocally that, you are not going to be the ones developing this. Can you just explain your thought process there? What? Yeah.
Yeah, basically we think we can very efficiently move this thing through to PEA and PFS, pre-feasibility study. And probably at that stage, somewhere between PEA, preliminary economic assessment for the jargon people, and PFS, we'll end up selling. And why would we sell them? Well, generally speaking, we're not equipped to build. This is not our skill set, and others, that is their skill set. That is what they do well, and they'll get paid. They'll get paid for doing it, whereas we wouldn't. We would be. They'd see us as rookies, potentially making fatal rookie mistakes, and punish us. So I think the simple math is that we will sell it. Now, who will we sell it to? Well, there's going to be a lot of potential buyers, okay, and they're already calling, and I think this is where the shorts haven't figured out yet because they're just looking at their algorithms and thinking, oh wow, rubbing their hands in glee, thinking we're about to harvest this guy. And what they haven't figured out is that industry is desperate for North American nickel, and we've got major nickel consumers the world over calling saying, hey, would you consider selling a piece of the mine? And that's just going to build. And we've got major nickel producers that we're talking with the Glencores, Rio Tintos, Wailus of the world that are saying, hey, we're interested in learning more about your deposit, and let's have a dialogue. North American nickel, if you don't have it as a battery maker, you're not going to be able to sell your batteries to the car companies because car companies need batteries content that's got like 90% North American content. And if you don't have North American nickel, you're not getting there. So it's like there's going to be, in my mind, in the future, not just a nickel price, there's going to be a North American nickel price that's going to get a premium. And I think when we sell this thing at some point, when will we sell it, Terry? We're going to sell it when we've found all the resource we think is there, and we've eliminated the nominal risks, just to prove the metallurgy and the environmental stuff that to de-risk it as much as we can. We'll take it through maybe to PFS, and at that point, then we're going to have an auction and conduct it, and we'll sell it, and our shareholders will, I think, do very, very well.
Mm-hmm. So I do want to return to North American nickel and why that is, like you say, kind of a separate bull thesis for nickel itself. Also, laterites versus sulphides too, which is again a feather in your cap. But can you just maybe I've missed it, but do you have a timeline for when Power Nickel will be at PEA stage? When does that happen?
Yeah, we're now sort of in talking about that. We're thinking basically H2 of 2023 for PEA, and then PFS is maybe a year after that.
Okay, perfect. Because that's when the bean counters can come out and really start to understand NPV and such, right? So I always find that those are massively beneficial to helping to understand the economics, even if they are napkin math in some ways, right?
Yeah.
So you did touch on this. So why don't I'll let you go off on this a little bit, right? Why don't you, tell us why North American nickel in particular is such a valuable thing versus Russian nickel even, right? And then, go through, and then I'm assuming most people listening to this will know this, but go through the laterites versus sulphides as well, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. So North American nickel, so why is that a hot topic these days? Well, because of the tax act that the U.S. government just passed that basically does a couple of things. It recognizes Canadian as domestic, i.e. as just like American nickel. And they developed these, what they call, I would say, content laws, or, percentage made in North America, laws or statistical evaluations. And what they've said is if you want to get the full tax credits that's going to be available for electric vehicle sales in the U.S., then, over a certain range of time, it very quickly gets to 90%. So 90% of the vehicle has to be made in North America, or you don't get full tax credit, and therefore you won't be able to get that incentive, which will be obviously key for moving if you're a consumer and you're looking at buying, and you're like two relatively similar vehicles, one comes with a full tax credit and the other one doesn't. Well, you're going to buy the one with the full tax credit. So you can see from a manufacturing perspective why it's going to be critical for them to be able to deliver the full tax credit, and if they don't, they're going to be at a competitive disadvantage. So if you work backwards from that math, you can't possibly get there by putting class 1 nickel from Russia, even if you could buy it, which you can't. But if you could, you can't get there because it's not North American. And I wonder if the I don't think people have figured that out yet. But and what does that mean? Well, you can see when the German chancellor comes over and meets, with Prime Minister Trudeau, and they talk about, working and cooperating with Germany on investing in Canadian mining. This is what it's all about. It's because German battery manufacturers are going to have to locate here, buy Canadian materials to be competitive, or they're going to lose a big chunk of business in the automotive sector. And, it's why the Koreans are doing the same thing. So that's why, I think that the shorts have made a fundamental mistake, and shorting the battery metals complex in general and power nickel in particular, because, at the end of the day, we're going to be able to get our money. This round we're going to do from our shareholders because it's so cheap, but the next round will probably become from a partner, that will pay us a fair economic price, which wouldn't be related to the market. It'll be related to how valuable it is to them. And it'll be us, trading one of these guys off, 10 or 20, buyers. So we're going to get a fair economic price, and that will be the money to move forward. So it's like, the whole math in these things is like the old days of them being in control of the purse strings is over, and it basically is a different set of circumstances, right? So I think North American nickel is going to be super rare. There's not. And you say, okay, what can get to production? So the sulphide mines brings us into the laterites and sulphides. So high grade sulphide mine like ours, if all things were a go, probably 4 years you could get in production. Okay, and that's historically fast, super fast for mining. For some of the lower grade, high volume, high tonnage deposits like Canada Nickel, Giga Metals, these types of deposits, these projects are $1 billion, $1.5 billion to bring to project. So that's a bigger number. I'm not saying it can't be done, but the IRRs are much lower, and so they'll pay back over a period of time. But that would take, I'm guessing, 7-8 years to bring to market, just because of the complexities of building these mines, financing, whatever. So I think some of them will be financed in this cycle, but not a lot. And then these, like this nickel deposit we've got, it's just going to be a fraction of what's needed. There's no way that we can hit the targets that have been set for the vehicle sales. It's just not possible for us to find enough nickel and get it into production quick enough. So if you got one, well, you're going to get paid. So now on the laterites and sulfides, well, basically the laterite deposits have generally they're, I would say, for the most part in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and with the current technology they've got, they tend to be highly energy intensive to develop. They tend to wreak a lot of havoc locally with their environment. And if we're trying to wrap ourselves up in the ESG flag, I'm not sure it gets there. Now, there's some new, obviously, there's new technologies and new approaches, and there's probably, I suspect there'll be some developments down the road that'll make these laterites more attractive and less of an environmental burden. But, right now, that's the big thing. It's sort of, they're quite, I would say, they would, the green that would be benefited from putting the nickels in the batteries and having less fossil fuels burned would be lost by the green that gets destroyed in making them. So there's that whole argument. And so I know that the car companies, having talked to them, are very sensitive to that, because they don't want to be, the guy saying, well, it's sort of like, the blood diamond thing. Well, it will be the blood nickel, and they don't want that. That would not be good for car sales.
No, certainly. No, excellent. And I mean, this is me just kind of chiming in here on something you mentioned a minute or two ago. And for my listeners that are repeat listeners, this is something that I've said before. But I mean, just again, macro tailwinds. I think that we're seeing like globalization in terms of trade networks is starting to fray, and we're starting to shrink down into, if not resource nationalism, resource regionalism, right? Whereas you and your allies are, and so from that perspective, nickel is a critical metal in Canada, it's a critical metal in Europe, critical metal in America, and so we, as you say, it's no longer a point of outsourcing or finding the cheapest metal globally. It's developing your own resources because it's such a critically advantageous part of your economy, right? So again, just another one of many sort of tailwinds for this sector, right? So,
yes, yeah, for sure.
Just so transitioning here, just 2022 exploration drilling campaign. Just briefly, can you run through where you've been and where you're going? I guess, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So basically, we completed our 2021 campaign in like mid December last year, I guess. Got the results out in March. So that's a likely time lag, basically, call it 10 weeks or so. And then we took, obviously the time to put together the 43-101, and then we did some advanced modeling as to where we think the deposit's going. So where we're at is we'll start actually, we sort of got delayed by, a couple things, but now we're rolling. They're up there actually, sort of getting the camp ready, and we'll start either on the weekend or Monday. So we'll update we'll put a press release out to that respect that, we've already told them that was coming, so it's not really rocket news, but we'll get it out nonetheless. The bits have been turning. And our plan will be to keep drilling through probably mid-December. And basically what we're going to try and do in this round is, the 43-101 we put out, basically, there, if you looked at it, you can see there's sort of some white space in the middle there of the deposit that, why is it white space? Well, it's simply because we didn't drill it. We got, little islands in the middle of the white space, and either side of the white space is nickel, so it's like highly likely that there's nickel between there. So, but nonetheless, we have to drill it, so we will, and so that'll be those easy, resource tons that we'll look to add on as easy as anything is in mining. And then what's really exciting for us is, we've got this theory. We basically, the way we modeled the deposit on what we call NISK main is it's an open pit at the top and then two declines. And the declines, the way to sort of think of this deposit is it's a river of nickel. So it's like the Mississippi River in that, there's very narrow sections, very shallow, and there's wide sections and there's deep sections. And so what we're trying to do is find this river of nickel as it's rolling through our land, and basically that's what we're doing. So right now, the best intercepts that we have had as a company were at depth and along strike. So we were getting 2.5-3% nickel EQ intercepts of 15, 20 meters. So that's exciting for us. That adds tonnage on in a hurry in this space. So what we're going to be doing there is we're going to be stepping out every 50 meters from those holes in a few directions, because you know, we have a theory of where the river's going, but rivers are winding, you know, so they take bends and, you know, they shimmy around. So we're going to be, you know, testing that out. And then we're going to keep on drilling there until eventually we know there's going to be a fault. Okay. And so what happens at the faults? Well, at the faults, basically you have a shear zone and the deposit, you know, it disappears. It maybe reappears on the other side of the fault down. It may appear up. You know, so what happens is once we come to the fault, we'll step across and go another 50 meters and we'll drill down to depth and maybe even another 100 meters until we find the zone again. And the great thing about nickel, and I never knew this until we started drilling for nickel because I'd never explored for nickel before, is that, man, you get to visually see this stuff. This peridotite rock, the black rock, is it's very visible. So you know when you're in the zone. It's like, I don't know, you know, gold and copper, yeah, you can see the chalcopyrite and you see that, but you never really know. I mean, you can see it, but you have no real few. I've seen some great looking visual rock that had almost no grade, you know. So, but in this stuff, you know, we know what we're looking for, and we can XRF it. We can sort of be confident that we're in the grade. And so that's exciting. So we'll keep on stepping out. And our feeling is, and this is an important, when I'm trying to, you know, convince people of the excitement we have for the project, one of the things I try and remind them of is that historically, every single nickel sulphide mine in the world is comprised of multiple deposits. They call them pods, strings of pearls, whatever. So here we are on this one deposit, NISK main, okay? It looks to me like we can get to 8 to 10 million tons on this one deposit. That's phenomenal, because that's almost enough to make us commercial right now. I would say today in this market, that's commercial. But this is just the first one. It's highly likely, unless we're like a total anomaly, the first in the history of the world, that has only one deposit. We're going to have multiple deposits, okay? And it's like I'm talking to our main geological advisors, and he's posed me this question. He said, what are your chances that this is your best deposit? And I said, I don't know. He said, well, I'll tell you, it's simple. There's probably going to be 3 or 4 of these things, and your odds are 3 or 4 to 1. This is the best. He said, that's just how the math's going to work. So he said, like, this could be the one, but it could also be a better one next door. So he said, his feeling is that we know this deposit is beneath the faults. We're going to keep on drilling through that until we maximize it, okay? And then he says we're going to step on the other side of these faults and hope that the next one's over there. And, you know, that's we won't really, so what we're going to do from an exploration, this program is we're going to drill underneath our faults, maximize this pod, infill drill, and then we're going to take a couple shots on either side. Okay, that's probably the extent of what we can do in this round with this amount of meterage of drilling. And then, you know, that will allow us to, you know, I'm sure it'll get us in the 7-8 million ton range, would be my guess, maybe more. And at that point, yeah, we think, given that we got cash in the till for the next round, the market's going to realize, holy crap, this is a commercial deal, and there's going to be a revaluation, and we'll probably end up doing a deal with a industry partner and fill up the till even more, and then we're going to go really exploring, because we've got geophysically 3 other pods, 3 other let's not call them pods, 3 other geophysical anomalies that look very similar to NISK main, and they've had, you know, little or no drilling on it. So we're going to start to tap in there, and hopefully we've got this whole nickel belt that we can, you know, turn into, you know, what Talon Metals has done, and what Voisey's Bay has done, and what Lynn Lake has done. I mean, there's no reason why we can't do that, and we fully expect to do that, and that's what's exciting. So when people, you know, when I say to people, I was at a Swiss Mining Institute, and I was making the case that, and I said, preface this, and I said, guys, it's rare in life you can get 100 extra, okay? And before you think I have, like, you know, aluminum foil in my head, I said, let me walk you through the math on this. Practically speaking, I say, hey, we're getting 1/10, 1/11 of what we should be getting for nickel we've already discovered pound the ground. Over time, that will normalize. We'll get our fair price. Okay, there's 10. Okay, now, at that time, we were at 3 million tons. And I said, hey, can we get to 20 million tons? 100%. Can we get to 50? That's going to take a lot more luck and drill bit, you know, success, but certainly not impossible. Somewhere between 7 and 17 times, all of a sudden, well, you multiply an average number in there by 10, and there you get your 100. So I'm saying, like, I'm not guaranteeing you're going to make 100x here, but isn't it great to be able to get in a deal? I mean, they're giving it away. Down here, there's very little downside, and it's got for sure, a big number upside, and possibly a life-altering number upside. And that's what you want to do. You want to get yourself into those situations where, hey, you can get lucky. And of course, we need to get more luck in the drill bit. And that's what, we pray every day for the gods of the drill to deliver the goods. But we think there's a mine here now that's going to be, a nice little mine. And we think there's a very realistic chance it could be a great mine. And if it is a great mine, well, kitty bar the door, as they say.
Yeah, off to the races, eh?
Yep.
Well, and I think, you say it well that, that it's so important when you have a geophysical model that you prove it up with the drill, right? And then as you do that, you develop this valid, predictable exploration thesis, right?
Yep.
And that's when you really are de-risked. And so, yeah, you talk about the magnetic anomaly, which is in your slide deck. I mean, yeah, the more and more you prove NISK main, the more and more de-risked your wildcat targets are, your NISK west targets are, right?
Yep.
Because, yeah, it's the same anomaly, right? So, no, I think, yeah, I mean, it's, nothing's certain until you poke holes in it, right? But,
yep.
no, I like it. I agree. Yeah. Do you mind just running through? So phase 2 is coming up right away, 5,000 meters, 7,000 meters, and then based on that as a phase 3. Can you just kind of, just a step by step?
Yeah, so phase 3, basically, the idea would be as soon as we, get some education on phase 1. Like, obviously, the best case scenario on phase 3 is we cross the fault and hit the peridotite on the other side, in which case we just have massive programs on either sides of those faults and keep on drilling. So that's that. I would expect in phase 3 we'll certainly start to take some pokes at our wildcats east and west, NISK west for sure, and start to get some. We'll probably do 1,000 meters worth of drilling in each of those, just to sort of get a sense of what might be there, and then so that would, our thinking would be sort of 15,000 meters, sort of, that'll be the next spring session. And then we would basically, consolidate that information, and then we'd get back in there in August of the following year and look to drill another 15 or 20,000 meters. So, I mean, we don't have money up for all that today, but and as I said, we will not run out of money. As long as the ore is there, the money is going to be plentiful to drill this baby up. And we will do that. So the drill bits are turning now, and other than consolidating the information and making good targeted decisions, which we do every sort of 60 days to sort of pull that together, and are doing ongoing as we're developing it. We'll be drilling pretty much around the clock until we maximize this resource. So
excellent. So just going to run through catalysts that I know of in the next 6 months to 2 years. You have phase 2, 5,000 meters. Phase 3, 10 to 15,000 meters. You have a PEA by the end of 2023, PFS by the end of 2024. That's a pretty, of course, and there's going to be phase 4 drilling in there somewhere, I'm sure, right? Am I missing anything? That's a pretty action-packed couple of years. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. The other thing that is like, but wait, there's more. Well, the other point and I say to those people, don't invest in power nickel unless you love the nickel deal, because it's all about the nickel. That being said, our gold and copper projects are no joke, and we're going to create some value for those. We said last year we would spin them out, and then the economic conditions just turned so negative it made no sense to do that. But we will spin them out this year, or we will do an M&A transaction that will be accretive to our shareholders, because these are, we're trading at these levels for our copper. Gold assets, and we felt we were undervalued there. So that's going to become a bonus for our shareholders. So again, not a reason to invest in my view. You got to buy the primary thesis that the nickel is the fantastic opportunity, but it'll be a nice bonus for us, and so we intend to that'll be something we do that we know from talking with our accountants that spin-outs are best happening after year end, just so that it just costs way less to do it from a auditing perspective and whatnot. So most likely that would happen in Q2 of next year. So if we don't do M&A transactions in the interim, that create value for us. So that'll be another positive surprise or development for us as shareholders.
Perfect. Couple of questions left here for you, kind of boilerplate things here, but in your view, and maybe I can already anticipate where you're going to answer this, but what's the biggest risk facing Power Nickel from here for it to be a profitable success for shareholders, and then how do you plan to mitigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the biggest risk is money, but again, we're planning to deal with that by putting the money in ourselves, and with the guys that have brought us here. So I think that'll be fairly de-risked shortly. And then once you have the money, the biggest risk would be somehow the deposit craps out, and that the first step out that you do hits mud. It just all of a sudden just disappears. So that can happen. I'm not saying it's highly unlikely that it would happen this way. And even so, we'd certainly have our infill stuff. And I think what a number I'll throw at you is that we use the PEA numbers from Talon to use our develop our 43-101. If we use the numbers that recent nickel PEAs have been done, we'd already be at 5 million tons. Okay, not have to do a thing. So even if this deposit got nothing more on the flanks, that's where we had our highest, our best intercepts. Hard to imagine that we can get some additional tonnage over there. Mm-hmm. We're still going to grow the deposit this round, but that's always you're still I would say the single biggest risk is always until the deposit is proven up. You still have to do that, So mm-hmm. We feel confident that that's there, and logically speaking, should be there. But you still have to do it. So those would be the risks. I'm not worried about the money. We'll get the money, and I'm not worried about permit risk, or I'm not worried about community risk or political risk. We're in a phenomenal spot to do that. So generally speaking, I think as mining projects go, this is about as de-risked a junior exploration play as you can find, and certainly per unit of risk, it's the cheapest in the ground for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent. And then you've kind of already anticipated this one with that answer, but again, boilerplate question here: why is Power Nickel worthy of my hard-earned money? Right, I work hard for my money, and I'm going to put it with you guys. Why you? Why not the guy down the street? Yeah,
well, a couple of things. One, I don't think anyone should bet all their money on one deal. That's just a mm-hmm. bad process, because there could be a black swan event for anyone. Mm-hmm. And we put a big chunk of our family money in this deal, but we're in other investments as well, and it's prudent to do that. But in terms of having us as part of your portfolio, I would say if you believe in nickel and in electrification and urbanization, which are two unstoppable forces that it doesn't really matter, the world is determined they're going to get into less fossil fuels over the course of time, and that the world is getting more urban. And you say, why is urbanization important? Well, the biggest driver of nickel is stainless steel. Stainless steel is fridges and stoves, pots and pans. So as people get more urbanized, they live in houses, they have fridges and stoves, they have pots and pans, they consume more stainless steel, and that's what drives the core part of the nickel market. Electrification, obviously, is that freight train that people are because of the whole environmental greening initiative, they've come categorically across the planet to support that. That's not changing anytime soon. So those two broad initiatives are going to drive things. And if you believe in that, then it's like within that space, where are the good sort of, how should I decide? Political risk is a big reality. When you're investing in mining companies, where are they operating? There's not a lot of safe spots. Even look at us. One of the reasons why I bought NISK was I felt Chile was getting a lot riskier. And so we diversified, got back into Canada because, and the jury's still out. Chile, they refuted the new constitution, which is quite radical, and hopefully things will work out down there. But it's certainly a more risky place it was than 5 years ago, pretty much across the board. So political risk is a problem. So so when you look in that context, and you say, okay, then I want the make the investment where the risk return reward is best. There's two parts of that equation: risk, i.e., what could happen to me on the downside, and reward, what could happen to me on the upside. You got to look at both. And I would argue that on a risk return basis, in nickel, in junior nickel, in jurisdictions that are safe to invest in, we're hands down the best deal on the planet. And we're happy to go head to head with anybody on that basis and have that discussion. So on that basis, I think we deserve a portion of your hard-earned investment dollar, and we'll do the best we can with it.
Perfect. Thank you. I mean, final word to you, Terry. Final thoughts?
You know what? I mean, I think generally, they say when there's blood in the streets, that's when you make the most money. There's been blood in the streets of mining for a long time, and the latest round of fear-mongering and market freakouts caused by the Russian thing and COVID and just all the dark news we receive daily is enough to depress anyone. But that being said, I am 100% convicted that I don't know if it's going to happen this next quarter, but it's happening. You know, the commodity boom is coming, and in particular in the battery metals space. And if folks are not into that space with a serious chunk of their money, I'm talking 20% to 50%. That's where I'm at. I think you're making a mistake. This is going to be outperform all other sectors for the next while, and it will provide some amazing returns. And I'm saying to folks, if not Power Nickel, find some other deals you believe in that space, and you're going to do well. And that's and listen to podcasts like this, which will ask hard questions of management teams and give you education, and then do your own due diligence and invest wisely.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Terry. Appreciate the time you take here. Appreciate the very articulate, interesting conversation. Thanks for tuning in, those of you who are listening. If you want more information on Power Nickel, head over to powernickel.com. It's a pretty strong website, lots of information. As for me, you can find me under the name Junior Resource Investing on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, your favorite podcast hosting mechanism. Thank you, Terry.
Great. Take care. Cheers.
Yeah, perfect. Have a good day.